-30 degrees Celsius, no metal tools, no paved roads, standing face to face with a 500-kilogram brown bear in the middle of a 6-month blizzard. Long before Hokkaido became a world-famous tourist destination with ski resorts and neon-lit cities, feudal Japanese called this northern island Ezochi, meaning the land of demons or the wild frontier. It was a place so desolate and unforgiving that even the bravest samurai refused to venture there during the winter months. To the shogunate in Tokyo, Ezochi was an impenetrable icebox inhabited by fierce beasts and hostile spirits. Yet, amid this frozen hell, a distinct group of indigenous people lived, hunted, raised families, and thrived for thousands of years. They were the Ainu. Looking at a modern map of Japan, Hokkaido appears as an integral, peaceful part of the nation. But throughout most of Japanese history, it was viewed as a distant, terrifying world. The winter in Hokkaido is not merely a seasonal drop in temperature. It is a relentless geographical force capable of erasing human life in a matter of hours. Bitter Siberian winds sweep across the Sea of Okhotsk, pushing massive walls of drift ice onto the northern shores and locking the entire island in a thick blanket of snow that lasts from November through April. If an untrained traveler from mainland Japan were stranded in the Hokkaido wilderness during December, their lifespan would be measured not in days but in minutes. Yet where outsiders saw an inescapable tomb of ice, the Ainu saw their home. They did not view winter as a curse, nor did they treat nature as an enemy that needed to be conquered. While modern civilization approaches survival through domination and technology, the Ainu mastered survival through a profound spiritual and practical mindset. They lived by an animistic worldview centered around the concept of Kamuy. In Ainu culture, everything in the universe possessed a spirit. The mountains, the rivers, the howling wind, the trees, the salmon swimming upstream, and the giant brown bears roaming the forests were all gods visiting the human world. Wearing physical coats to interact with people, the Ainu believed that humans and gods existed in a reciprocal relationship. Humans needed the meat, fur, and timber provided by the Kamuy to survive the harsh northern climate. In return, the Kamuy desired human respect, prayers, and gifts, such as intricately carved willow sticks called inao and sacred sake offerings. If humans treated the environment with greed or disrespect, the gods would withdraw their blessings, bringing famine and harsh blizzards. This spiritual framework was not just a religious belief. It was an ecological survival strategy that prevented overhunting, preserved natural resources, and gave the Ainu an unmatched psychological calm in the face of extreme natural adversity. To understand how the Ainu survived temperatures that could easily freeze human blood, one must look at their architectural ingenuity. Their traditional dwelling, known as a Cise, appears at first glance to be a simple, fragile hut made of wood and dried grass. However, the Cise was a brilliant piece of thermodynamic engineering designed specifically for Arctic conditions. The Ainu did not dig deep into the frozen earth to build foundations, as frozen ground conducts cold directly into living spaces. Instead, they constructed flexible timber frames using native pine and oak, lashing the beams together with wild vines rather than metal nails, which would crack under severe frost. The walls and roofs of the Cise were thatched with thick layers of dried reed grass and bark. But the true insulating secret lay in the snow itself. Rather than clearing snow away from their homes, the Ainu allowed the winter blizzards to pile heavy drifts along the exterior walls. The trapped air pockets inside the packed snow acted as a powerful thermal insulator, blocking the freezing Siberian winds from penetrating the interior. Inside the Cise, at the exact center of the room, sat an open hearth where a fire burned continuously day and night. This hearth represented Apushi Kamuy, the fire goddess, who protected the family from sickness and cold. The smoke from the central hearth rose toward a small ventilation opening near the roof. As it drifted upward, the warm smoke coated the interior thatch with a thick layer of natural tar and soot. This process waterproofed the roof, prevented rot, and repelled insects during the warmer months, allowing a Cise to stand sturdy for decades. Inside the dwelling, the temperature remained remarkably stable, creating a cozy microclimate where families gathered to craft tools, weave textiles, and tell epic oral poems called yukar during long winter nights. Staying warm inside a shelter was only half the battle. The Ainu also had to venture out into the sub-zero wilderness to hunt and gather. Without access to silk or cotton mills, they engineered clothing directly from the forest. Their most iconic garment was the atush, a coat crafted from the inner bark of the oyo, a species of wild mountain elm. Ainu women stripped the bark from young trees in early spring, soaked the fibers in river water for weeks to soften them, and then hand-spun the threads on backstrap looms. The resulting fabric was surprisingly lightweight, exceptionally durable, and possessed natural water-resistant properties that kept the wearer dry in heavy snowfall. For winter footwear, the Ainu developed a unique innovation, sippo keri, or shoes made entirely from fish skin. They harvested the thick skin of dog salmon after autumn spawning, dried it, and stitched it together into high boots lined with dry moss and fur for insulation. Remarkably, the fish scales were deliberately oriented toward the soles, acting like primitive crampons that provided incredible grip on slick river ice. Every piece of attire was designed with deep practical knowledge of local materials, allowing hunters to trek across frozen landscapes without suffering from frostbite or hypothermia. In the frozen northern wilderness, edible plants vanished completely under meters of snow for 6 months of the year. Survival depended almost entirely on animal protein and stored fat. During the autumn months, millions of salmon migrated up Hokkaido's rivers to spawn. The Ainu harvested these fish using specialized wooden spears called marep, which featured revolving hooks that secured the fish without tearing the flesh. The salmon was then smoked over the hearth fires of the Cise, or wind-dried in the freezing air to create satchep, a preserved fish jerky that served as a vital food reserve during the darkest winter months. However, the ultimate test of Ainu survival was their relationship with the king of the Hokkaido wilderness, Kamuy, the Usuri brown bear. Weighing up to 500 kilograms, these massive predators possessed bone-crushing strength and thick, matted fur that could deflect glancing blows. For an Ainu hunter armed only with a short wooden bow and a hunting knife, engaging a brown bear in direct physical combat was suicide. A single swipe from a bear's paw could shatter human bones instantly. To hunt this formidable creature, the Ainu relied not on brute force, but on biochemical mastery. They developed a lethal poison known as Surku, derived from the roots of wild aconite or monkshood plants gathered from mountain slopes. Ainu hunters crushed the toxic roots and combined them with secret additives, including spider venom, pine resin, and crushed water bugs, forming a dark, sticky paste. The preparation of Surku was a highly guarded secret passed down through generations. The poison was so potent that hunters tested its strength by placing a microscopic drop on the tip of their tongue. If the tongue went numb instantly, the batch was ready. The Ainu coated the carved bone tips of their arrows with Surku paste and set spring-loaded bow traps along known bear trails in the forest. When a bear triggered the trap, the poison-tipped arrow struck its hide. The arrow was cleverly designed to break upon impact, leaving the poisoned tip embedded deep within the animal's flesh. Rather than chasing the wounded beast immediately, the hunters waited patiently. As the bear ran, its accelerated heart rate pumped the deadly aconite toxin through its bloodstream, paralyzing its heart within minutes. The Ainu followed the tracks through the snow, finding the giant beast dead without a single drop of blood wasted in a dangerous fight. When an Ainu hunter approached a fallen bear, there was no boasting or triumphant shouting. Instead, the hunter knelt reverently in the snow beside the animal, took off his head covering, and spoke softly to the dead beast. He apologized for taking its life and thanked the spirit of the bear for bringing its meat and fur to the human village. The hunter believed that the bear's spirit was watching him, and by showing profound gratitude, the spirit would return to the divine realm and tell other gods that humans were honorable hosts, encouraging more animals to visit the Ainu in future winters. This spiritual philosophy culminated in the most famous and misunderstood ritual in Ainu culture, the Iomante. In the spring, if Ainu hunters found a hibernating bear den and took an orphan newborn cub, they brought it back to their village. The cub was raised with immense affection, fed the finest food, and sometimes even nursed by Ainu mothers alongside their own human infants. The young bear lived among the villagers for 1 to 2 years, treated like a high-ranking family member. Then, in the dead of winter, the village held the sacred Iomante ceremony. Through elaborate dances, prayers, and feast offerings, the villagers ritually sacrificed the bear to release its spirit back to Kamuy Moshir, the land of the gods. To modern observers, raising an animal with love only to kill it seems contradictory and cruel. But to the Ainu, it was the ultimate act of devotion. They believed the god had descended to earth as a cub to experience human love. By sending it back with gifts, food, and songs, they ensured that the god would return to its divine home happy, promising to send prosperity and abundance back to the human village in the years to come. This ritual reveals a critical insight into ancient survival mindsets that modern society has largely lost. In the harsh wilderness of Hokkaido, life and death were not viewed as opposing forces, but as an endless cycle of borrowed energy. The Ainu understood that for human beings to survive the freezing cold, other living beings had to surrender their physical forms. They did not see themselves as owners or conquerors of the land, but as humble guests in a vast ecosystem. This profound humility gave them the emotional resilience needed to endure extreme isolation, terrible blizzards, and unexpected famines without losing their sanity or humanity. For over 3,000 years, the Ainu thrived in harmony with the brutal northern climate. They conquered sub-zero blizzards, mastered chemical warfare against apex predators, and built a rich cultural heritage in the heart of the wilderness. But the greatest threat to their existence did not come from nature. It came from modern political forces. In 1869, following the Meiji Restoration, the newly modernized Japanese government formally annexed Ezochi, renaming it Hokkaido. Thousands of Japanese settlers, soldiers, and bureaucrats flooded into the island, eager to exploit its timber, coal, and agricultural potential. Almost overnight, the ancestral lands of the Ainu were confiscated and declared state property. The government enacted harsh assimilation policies designed to erase Ainu identity. The Ainu were forbidden from hunting salmon in the rivers, banned from setting poison bow traps for bears, and barred from practicing their traditional spiritual ceremonies, including the Iomante. Ainu women were prohibited from receiving traditional lip tattoos, and children were forced into Japanese schools where speaking the Ainu language was strictly punished. The master survivalists of the northern frontier were rendered landless outlaws on their own ancestral soil, stripped of the very practices that had kept them alive for millennia. The story of the Ainu is a poignant reminder of human endurance and fragile heritage. They prove that human beings can adapt to the most extreme environments on Earth without massive industrial power, relying instead on observation, material wisdom, and deep respect for the natural world. While modern civilization built concrete cities and heating grids to isolate itself from the wild, the Ainu survived by becoming an inseparable part of it. As the Ainu fought to preserve their ancient way of life in the frozen north, a very different survival crisis was unfolding in the south. In mainland Japan, 250 years of Tokugawa peace brought a sudden end to warfare, leaving tens of thousands of elite samurai suddenly unemployed. Stripped of their purpose and income, these masterless warriors, known as ronin, had to navigate a changing society where sword skill meant nothing and economic survival was everything. How did the deadly warriors of feudal Japan adapt when their sword was no longer needed? We will decode the dark reality of the Great Ronin Crisis next week. If you value deep historical breakdowns and survival insights, please subscribe to Prehistoric Samurai and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next chapter of Human Resilience.